Hello.
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 Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Max asked if there was no audio or if everybody was muted. I think everybody's just muted.
Well, I said hi.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
dang.
Can you hear us, Max? Oh, he has no audio.
All right, that might have done it.
Yes.
I hear sounds too. Hello.
Hi.
Sometimes you gotta unplug it and replug it like 3 times.
Third time is the charm. Okay, cool. Should we start? Yeah, so I put one agenda item for today. So I've been looking into this reorg proposal that we have to rearrange our library stuff, right? I just wanted to discuss. I was discussing this yesterday with Sartash as well, and I got a bit confused, like what exactly we want to achieve there. So I thought I'll just bring it up today and just get everybody's opinion. So I'm reading that MVP definition, right? And it says that we should have source and library folder, and source should have template repos and suites. And I've been looking into the actual repo also, and pretty much mostly it's already been. I mean, they are sort of organized already. I think the only piece that is not in place right now is the mutation folder or that directory, particular directory. So I think that probably the one that we'll have to move. So I'm just curious whether I'm getting this first of all right, or do we have any other thoughts on that?
Sorry, what it's like trying to find, because there's someone internally who was interested in this library discussion, and I was trying to like reach out to them where you're talking, but So sorry about that. What was the?
Nilik, would it help if you share your screen?
Yeah, I think that.
And then just put like the folder structure maybe to the one side and then the doc to the another one.
Yep. Let's see. Hang on.
And I think for the organization, I don't think I'm not sure if it matters that much, because I think we should go for the basically the website generation or like the CLI. So users don't really consume from the library itself, but they basically use like the website or the CLI to in the future to deploy these.
Okay, so this is about how should we organize generated templates.
No, I was just thinking like we should keep that in mind. So for like the organization, so ideally, I think we would want at least that's what I was thinking. We would like users to consume from the website or through like some sort of CLI in the future. And the organization should support that versus the end user facing organization.
Yeah, if nothing else, like you're gonna wind up with like multiple categories per template, right? In a future world where we can categorize these, and folders don't let you do that. I guess there's soft links, but that sounds not fun.
We can't see your screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so what I was trying to say is like we already have like stuff pretty much organized in the library and source here, right? And this is what we are seeing in this doc as well. I think the only part that is not probably or misplaced in that is this mutation folder or this directory. So I was thinking I can just probably move that into the library as well, and then it can have like, let's say under, I think, like pod security policy, right? We have like a similar directory structure under mutations. So I can move these examples in there, and I think we should be good. The other thing is, sorry, go ahead.
One thing about templates versus mutations is mutations are concrete, right? Whereas templates are abstract. So the mutations they're kind of like examples, right? Like they do a thing, but I don't think they're meant to be consumed uncritically. Templates kind of are, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, you could customize them, but
correct. But and correct me here if I'm wrong, but we do have constraint templates here in source. What we have in library are just the constraints and the examples that we, basically what we want to have, right?
Source has the rego that backs constraint templates. I'm forgetting the build. So we have the template for a constraint template in there. Yeah, but
I see, and we generate it and put it over there.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so what do you, I think one of the suggestion is then move this template from here to the source as well.
So I would be leery about mixing generated content into the same directory as the code that generates the content. Like same directory might work, certainly same file is an anti-pattern. The reason for that would be it's very easy to just, if something goes wrong with the generation or you remove a template or whatever, you can rm-rf the generated directory and rebuild the generator directory, and you don't need to worry about like dangling code.
Yeah, I think that in the MVP definition, that's the suggested approach. So in this case, both the TMPL and then the actual template will be under SRC. So that's the confusing part.
That's one.
Yeah, because if the rego is there and then the TMPL is there, we'll put the templates in there too.
Sorry, so I thought you were talking to Nilek. You're saying that if we'll put the generated stuff next to the pieces, right?
Oh no, I was not saying that. I was saying that the MVP, this definition is saying that. Because if the rego is the source rego is there, right? So it says SRC will contain all author-centric resources. And that's basically where the rego lives today, right? And then that's where the TMPL lives also. Do you want to scroll down? Like, oh yeah, there it is. We can see it at the bottom. Constraint.tmpl and then SRC test and SRC. So this one is basically moving the rego and then the Gator suites to over there. But then the TMPL and then the template will be in the same folder in this definition.
I mean, so as a consumer, right, because we don't have these like command line stuffs yet, right? The things that make it easy to pull templates. This seems like it would make it harder for me to use templates, right? Like I'm a bit confused as to the purpose of what we're trying to do here as well, right? Currently, sort of where we have like a worst effort, best effort, MVP kind of way of pulling templates is kind of what this or directory structure is doing, right? So one, why are we reorganizing it? Like, what's the intent? Like, is it teeing us up for something? Why are we losing?
Oh, I told we already said we wanted
observation.
to. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt. Just because I think you guys are maybe talking about different things. So just to clarify, like in the doc under MVP under /source I think the template there is a TMPL file, right? Not the actual template that users are going to deploy to their cluster. I agree with you, the terminology, like the word it's stated in the doc may be confusing people, but I believe that's the template file, not the actual CT, not the constraint template.
So
maybe
if you scroll down in the I think we're going with the proposal number 1 here. So it does show the TM template right next to the source, but it doesn't show any TMPL.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't really reading the proposals because this is to be deleted. So.
Yeah, I think we are going with number 1 because that's the one that's like highlighted.
Gotcha.
I don't think we ever like approved this.
Right. That's
so I think this just sort of like was written and then people got distracted versus like we all looked at this and said, this is a good idea. Right. So I don't know if that, is like people were thinking we already had a plan of action.
Yeah, maybe then we should take a step back and then reevaluate this. So maybe we don't need this at all, and then we can just focus on the website.
Yeah, I was going to say that because, I mean, if I understand this correctly, our long-term goal is more like how we can, how user can discover the different regos and templates, right? So I think the directory structure we have, when I first looked at it, it seemed fine to me. So if we just have like a good user experience on top of this, I mean, that would be, I think, something we want. Correct me here if I'm wrong.
I think so. I kind of remember back in the day that being, well, yeah, that we kind of like looked at this and said like, yeah, website and command to consume. I think, yeah. Sorry, I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying that rings true to me, and I'm just trying to remember the state of the last time we talked about this.
Yeah, and if you look at the doc, right, it talks about reorganizing the file or the folder structure in the repo right now, right? And it talks about the CLI, but it doesn't really talk about a website. So I think that's a change in the scope a little bit. And given that I don't think we signed off on this, would it make sense for Nilip to come back with a proposal based on maybe an agreed upon scope for this call?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the website is basically taking the number one, but making it more like it's being a website. We talked about generating them to make it the markdown files. We could,
but that's different, right? Because that's talking about a file, like a README for each template.
Right, and in the website right. It will be similar, right? So like the Gatekeeper website, where
but the scope has changed because now you're talking about using the website as a discovery mechanism or install.
Exactly, that part is new. That's new. Yeah, definitely, yeah. But it is basically generating some sort of markdown file and then having that website consume that markdown file.
Makes sense.
I was just looking into it. It won't be like much like generating MD, but more like creating this, but should be fine. We can generate a website out of it.
Sorry, I got like a bit of that. It's a bit choppy, my audio.
Oh, I think what Rita was trying to say is like maybe we can come up with a newer proposal where we can define like how the website should be. First of all, this current proposal doesn't mention anything about a website. So probably we can write like what the website can be, and then and how the user will consume or discover the policies and consume it from the website. And then the CLI could still be there, I think, so that that will be our sort of next step to figure it out how we can discover with the CLI as well.
Yeah, do we want to brainstorm some like minimal requirements for the website? I've already heard like Markdown for like discovery / I guess documentation of templates is an idea thrown out there.
Correct.
We might have. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, what I was saying is like, yeah, I mean that's what I think we were hoping to do. So like we can come up with the proposal and then we can see what everybody thinks.
Yeah, any other kind of like maybe some introductory pages, right? Saying like, here's the library, here's how to use templates roughly. We're stretch goaling, maybe some guides on contributing. Anything else? And I'm not saying that all of this has to be MVP stuff. I'm just like spitballing ideas for stuff we might want to see the finished website.
Yeah, I think that like categories would be great. We might need to add like annotations to the templates and then basically use that for building the categories, right? So like the PSP could be a category, and then I don't know, like a general could be multiple categories perhaps. I think we talked about minimum gatekeeper version. That could be a category. I mean, with like a one template in there. But even before we reject anything, we could just add like an annotation there. So we could say this is going to be like a separate category for Gatekeeper 3.9, for example. Yeah, and then examples for the disallowed, allowed, and an example constraint. And then mutations will all be examples, I guess. And then those all doesn't have to be an MVP, but slowly.
Right. I think, if I look at this, right, I think this directory structure could be like categories, like this exact same thing. These are like organized pretty good, in my opinion.
So the thing about categories is that a template can be relevant for more than one category, right? Like PSP templates could also, like, for instance, the one about directory sizes or permissions, right, could also be like in the storage category, right?
Perhaps support for multiple categories then.
Yeah. Because otherwise, directories I think would be fine, right? And if you start to think about, I don't know, compliance regimes or best practices, right? Anything kind of where there's some sort of like codification. It would be nice to also categorize templates with regard to their usefulness for those kinds of things, right? So that users, if they come in with a known problem, because someone says, hey, you need to be compliant with this thing, have you looked at, Gatekeeper or whatever, their job is a little bit easier in terms of figuring out what we could do for them in terms of like solving their practical problem.
Like when you said these folders could be categories, you mean like, for example, container limits, container requests, is that what you're talking about? Or you're talking about general?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. So I mean, I was thinking these folder, names, these can be category itself. Because I was also looking at some other projects like Kube Warden, and I think they have something similar, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because the way it's structured right now, these are basically group, like each one of these folders are basically constrained templates, right? Like this a policy, for example. Whereas like the folder that contains that's more like a big bucket of category. Like, for example, POS security policy, general, right? I don't really see the individual folders as categories because they're solving a specific policy need. And I think it's interesting to have categories, but I think most people probably just search, I would imagine. So if they can find the policy that they're looking for, and then once they go to that page, I assume we're going to have some command that tells them like kind of like helm install kind of thing where it's a single command that shows them how to install this policy onto their own cluster. I think that would be really, really good.
Yeah. So give me all. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick thought there. Then how about we flip our approach? So what we can do is then probably we can start with a website and just have all the policies there and just work first on discoverability probably. So like how user can discover basically. And then as a next step, then see what makes sense or what categories make sense and then rearrange them. Because discovery can work regardless whether they are categorized or not.
Right. And just kind of one thought, right, is I think even as an MVP, if the website makes the policies discoverable, but if it doesn't have like a command line action where it's not actionable, it's not as useful. That's my opinion, of course.
Yeah, I think that MVP could just be like a copy-paste template. You have to do it, or like a link, like a copy-paste template and a link to it, right? And then over time, we could add like our own CLI, and then that could replace it, right? So the way that I was thinking is like, I don't know if you guys remember, like Rita, you would probably remember, like a Monocle project, right? there was like a Helm deployment project, but it only had like this Helm install copy paste command where you couldn't deploy to your cluster. So that's kind of started with that, right? You could copy paste it and that's it. But then over time, you just deploy that command, that component to your cluster. And then after that, you could just like one button and you could install it. So it could start like that, like, hey, just here's a template, you have to copy paste it. Or here is like I don't know, even the the template with like the kubectl, like basically inline template. So you basically copy paste it and then it just gets deployed. But on over time, when we have a CLI, we could replace that with the CLI. So like then it just can go from there.
Like this is almost the GitHub thing, right? Like the clone this repository button, right?
Yeah, basically, you're right. Like you basically like, hey, just copy, like click to copy, and then you paste it. And then you can also just like put a link to the raw GitHub URL. So if somebody wants to just kubectl apply there, they can also do that.
And I just put the link in the chat. I think the elephant in the room is Artifact Hub. I believe today there are a bunch of OPA things there, right? I think.
Yeah, I think OPA is already there.
Yeah, I think there's OPA context Docker policies. And I think these are just OPA bundles. Is that right?
I think so.
I looked at these are Rego files.
They're Rego. It's on the right side. If you click on the policies, yeah.
It's like a bundle of Rego files.
But they come from so if you click on install, you'll see like the conf test pool, and then the link, the Git link, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and so I think something similar to this, right? Like like as a MVP2 maybe.
Yeah, so I was talking to Nilek yesterday about this. Oops. So this could be another approach that we could do, but it's not very customizable. So if you wanted to have our own categories, like say PSP and whatnot, right? Artifact Hub doesn't give us that sort of option. I mean, it's nicer as in like we don't have to manage Artifact Hub; they do it for us. So I really like that aspect of it, but the downside is it's not customizable.
Yeah, Artifact Hub could be like the first approach that, or the flipped approach that we were discussing. Like it will be just like one category gatekeeper and everything will be there and people can just discover.
But I think the way they're exposing it is, I mean, I don't know how they're kind of classifying these. Could it be that because the bundles are OCI compliant?
No, I think they just added OPA policy as a kind.
Okay.
So they're not OCI. So if you go look at the policies, they're just regular policies.
They're just regular. Okay.
Yeah. So it sounds like they ingest from like a Git repository. You basically probably like onboard that Git repository to Artifact Hub, and then it just basically keeps consuming.
So here's one just thinking out loud. Is it possible for us to work with Artifact Hub to add a constraint template or gatekeeper category so that all the gatekeeper policies could have its own category?
Yeah, so I was discussing that with Anil. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think that is possible. So I've been looking into the Artifactory Hub also, and they have like a standard onboarding guide. So probably what I'm thinking here is like what we can do is we can onboard and have like a gatekeeper as a separate category, and then probably just have all our policies in there. Now the details of it, I'm also still yet to discover like how the constraint template of how this all going to be worked, but that is possible. Like we can onboard ourselves there.
One thing that's interesting too is we have a layer of abstraction here that other people don't, right? So I think it's interesting to think about what our approach is, right? Because there's a couple of modes where we could say, here's the templates that enables you to basically have more control surface on your cluster. And now you have this control surface. Have fun with it. Another option could be to like not ship all the templates in bulk, but like allow people to consume piecemeal. Not sure how that integrates with Artifact Hub. Or you could start thinking about like cohesive groups of templates that are parameterized kind of like Helm charts, right? Where you create the templates, but also some constraints that are in alignment with like, you know, let's say pod security standards, right? Or like maybe not parameterized, but maybe you have like concrete like constraints and templates that users would modify after the fact. I don't know, there's just a lot of ways we could slice it and dice it, which is good, but we should, you know, have a coherent kind of messaging and approach around that.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like you've already started evaluating Milik, but I definitely would like for us to kind of see the pros and cons of using Artifact Hub because it's already established. I think there's already users on it, so it may help with it may help with the marketing side of things. Sorry, real quick, and I think again because it already works, like maybe there's less work for us to maintain a website to do this, and assuming it has the capability to expose not just regos but also like constrained templates and constraints, then I think it's a good candidate.
Right. Let me ask this question then. Is categorization important to us or not?
I think yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, or like, let's just say customization, not categorization, but customization, basically. But categories could be like a subset of it.
And what do you mean by customization?
So like the making things like into categories, or I don't know, making like a gatekeeper specific things. Say, I don't know, let's see what else we have in the class in our library. Maybe like we want to do like a mutation checkbox, or like a mutation sort of like a badge or something like that, right? With our website, we'll get to be in charge of that, but with Artifact Hub, we'll have to ask them, hey, can we do it? And they could say no.
I see what you're saying, like customization of how we encourage discovery.
Right, yeah. Because Artifact Hub is very generic, could be like Helm charts, Q-Borden policies, I don't know, like the Rego bundles and all that stuff, right? So it tries to make a common denominator sort of thing, right? But it doesn't have the specific categories for like policies. So like if you look at the Q-Borden's old website, you'll see like the really nice, like, let me drop a link. Really nice like categories there, like filtered by resources, filtered by keywords. But if you look at the Artifact Hub for Q-Borden policies, it doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, like it's almost like being on Artifact Hub is good just so that if people haven't heard of you, they can.
And we can do both, obviously, but Artifact Hub is,
I mean, I definitely see the benefit of having further filtering. I don't really have, but I think, I mean, ultimately, aren't people just searching by keywords? I don't know.
Well, so yes, but the ability to search by keywords is pretty powerful, right? If you have like 1,000 policies, you know, and pods makes it like 100 policies, you've saved yourself a lot of reading and sifting. And I imagine pods is like the most popular one, right? So if actually you're after network stuff, right, it's even more selective. And as I said, if it's more about, I don't know, like specific controls related to, and I'm forgetting the compliance regime, or it's not, but there's like security recommendations for K8s, right? And they have like specific control numbers if you wanted to. What's up?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's a reason why Keyboardin and Kyverno all created their own. That's also an indicator.
Keyboardin is moving to Artifact Hub.
Oh, are they
moving entirely? Like they're killing?
Yeah. So if you open the web hub.keyboardin.io, you'll see at the top we have
moved. Okay.
Yeah, and then this is their.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, I can see both definitely as pros and cons.
Yeah.
I mean, we can pursue both. I think we just need to start with one.
Well, another thing is just like documentation, right? Like if people are consuming templates, right, the immediate next step is, okay, well, I have this template. What parameters does it accept? What does it actually do? The examples. And I don't know if Artifact Hub does that. And again, there's as I said, the like abstraction, right? Like I don't know about what keyboarding is doing, but like the conf test stuff, all that, like almost definitionally has to be concrete executable policies, right? So what would our thing be?
Yeah, but again, like the fact that Keyboardin is moving to Artifact Hub, it's also interesting. And selfishly, when I look at the different kinds on Artifact Hub, I see Keyboardin policies, I see OPA policies. You know, it would be nice to have Gatekeeper there as well.
I don't know if the discussion is in. I'm actually not hearing any objections to being on Artifact Hub. I'm more hearing like is there value in having our own?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think about the priorities.
Right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think that, so one thing to comment about the Artifact Hub, this is an interesting angle. I posted the link. So if we were to be on Artifact Hub and Artifact Hub supports Gatekeeper policies, others can also onboard to this. So it's not just library. So say I have a repo, I can also onboard that to Artifact Hub. So this could be a pros and cons also.
It's just a different publisher.
Right, different publisher, but can also confuse users like, hey, is this the official thing? What happens if it's called the same name? Sort of like a typo squatting we were talking about, Rita. Do we sort of allow that sort of behavior, or do we want that?
Or you can't control it, to your point, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, right. With our own website, we could control it, right? We could just say,
well, we have copyright. Like I'm not saying, and also whatever the trademark rights we have are. So I don't know if people like technically are allowed to. However, I wouldn't look forward.
Oh no, I meant like say somebody took a constraint template and I added a malware. This is making up stuff. Or like something that changed the behavior that not great. And then Jeremy had a good point. There's like a verified publisher badge on Artifact Hub, but it could be that the names are so similar that it's kind of like a typo squatting sort of deal.
Yeah, I mean similar names. I you know, like G4 T Keeper. Is that something we're concerned about? Are we gonna pull the full DNS in TensorFlow.
I mean, this happened. We were just talking
This is
about
real. This literally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for domain names for sure. Are people doing this on Artifact Hub? They're like finding all the variants of their.
I think Surcharge is just thinking about edge cases.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, like, something we control versus, hey, that's just going to take its own sort of shape and form.
Yeah, and we don't want to be in a spot where people are using our name and we have to figure out how to get them to not use our name, because like even if they shouldn't, it's neither free nor quick, I imagine, to get them to stop if they're not willing.
SIG legal. We should want.
So yeah, so if you could include that in your doc as well, to like maybe list the pros and cons of each option, and then maybe as a group we can just make a decision next time based on the list. Yeah, because I definitely don't want to do both. That just seems like more work than I think we want at this point.
Well, if all it is like, hey, let's dump all constraint templates in Artifact Hub, right? Like just a bundle of all templates, and we could figure out a more nuanced approach later. That might not be too expensive.
Like everything as one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't
like
know
if the goal is just like call
user-friendly,
divs.
though.
I think it will own sort of buckets. So we could just put like every policy in general or PSP in there, like individually.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think we just need to add like a gatekeeper policies on the left side, and it could still be under the thing. I don't know if they support it though. So I think that's the investigation we'll need to.
I mean, we gotta work with them and create like a new kind. Yeah.
Well, and I don't think, like, if the concern is like discoverability in terms of like discovering gatekeeper and also like this dibs on the name concern, I don't know if user friendly is like the biggest thing, right? Like, I don't know how they'd feel about, hey, if you need like more details or a more granular thing, check out our library website, right? And
yeah, personally, I think it's less about dibs. It's more about making it discoverable and user-friendly so that people can actually discover the gatekeeper policies in the Artifact Hub, for example.
Well, so why Artifact Hub, though, right? Like, and I think the answer would be you think there are eyeballs that are not familiar with Gatekeeper that are on Artifact Hub.
Well, and it's one of the central place for CNCF components. So it's already established a good precedent for stuff like this. So again, like it's sort of like it's already there. Why not leverage it versus like creating our own, right?
And the answer there would be like documentation, customization of how we present things, as Surtesh said.
Well, now we're just going like the pros and cons again, right?
Right. Well, but I was saying that with regard to your thought of like it's too expensive to do both. If the pure, like, the main concern was just having a presence there, my point was we could have a presence fairly cheaply. I'm not saying it would be a great presence, but it would be.
And I guess my point is, if we do have a presence, I'd rather that we have a good presence. I don't want to just put us there just to have a presence without providing a good experience. Then it kind of defeats the purpose, I think. That's personal opinion,
But what does the good experience look like to you?
Well, I think what Max is suggesting is everything gets uploaded as a single bundle. So like,
Oh, I see.
and I don't think
That's
that's
just very confusing. Yeah.
that's not a good experience.
I think we can just do individual ones. We don't have to do like fancy category. I mean, we can't do fancy categories, but we could just do individual ones.
That's right.
So the way Artifact Hub does is basically goes and like checks like the Helm repos or like Git repos. So it just basically constantly queries like, hey, is there an update? So it doesn't really host it themselves, but it checks the sources.
Yeah.
So if we are sticking to the current directory structure, right? What we have under like general and that PSP and whatnot under library, right? Maybe we can just replicate the same thing in Artifact Hub.
Yeah.
Right?
That's why I was saying we already have the structure, so it might not be as bad.
Yeah, so I think that what Qboard did it is they have these repo, and then it one has like PSP in there, so we could follow a similar approach. But it doesn't have like a nicer categories, just like say like PSP. You cannot just see the PSPs. It's just basically everything. And then you have to find what policy you want from there.
I like the install button. It just shows you the command that you can just like dump in your cluster.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. Like over time, when you have a CLI, you could have like something like this.
That's nice.
Yeah. So wait, are we still like worried, Rita? You said like we should do one or the other because it's too expensive, or is it now like okay, it's actually not that bad to have both?
No, I was saying I think it's not that bad to onboard our existing policies to Artifact Hub using the same folder structure we already have.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's like relatively cheap to get the presence in a way you like, and then we can.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But again, I don't know what the shortcomings or gaps that Artifact Hub may have. So, for example, as Nearly, it discovers more, and you may find out, oh, there's, it doesn't support something that's really important to us. Then it's a moot point, right? So this is just looking at the experience. I think it's better. That's my opinion.
Excellent.
I mean, as long as we're not like nixing the website. Sorry if I talked over you. Like that's where I would get concerns. Presence in Artifact Hub, like all things being equal, sure. For me, I would value the customization stuff that Surtesh is talking about.
Definitely pros and cons.
I can see another approach that we can take, which is probably start with Artifact Hub and see if we can first replicate our current directory structure and like have it in there. And while doing that, we can probably discover what are the different things Artifact Hub can't and can't do, and what we want actually, or do we want something extra on top of it? And at the end of that evaluation, we can decide whether to go for our custom website and do all those customizations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, as long because we're gonna want documentation, we're gonna want more granular ways to consume this stuff. We're gonna want probably like some kind of way to engage with the parameterization and maybe like bundle related not just templates but constraints together in the future. So I mean, we could do that work, but we're gonna want our own thing.
I see.
I think. I'm not saying that we, the timing, right, and what we start with, but the long tail, we're probably gonna want our own thing.
Yeah, I would say Artifact Hub is good for like marketing, as Rita was saying, and visibility. So that could help with the initial thing. But I think I agree also with Max that like longer term, we will want our own things to be able to do these customizations.
Yeah, it might be good to again list out what those things are and check, see if it's possible in Artifact Hub or not. I think right now it's hard for me to grok what is possible or not.
Yeah, like I don't know. I see this as another publisher that like, yeah, it's nice for visibility, but they're a one size fits all kind of shop, right? So I would be hesitant to use it for anything more than that.
I mean, I also like the community aspect of it. Like I was mentioning, I wasn't like thinking edge cases there, but also others can contribute. I mean, this could be a good thing and a bad thing, obviously. But so it doesn't have to be just our library. But if somebody wants to make their own library for their own specific use cases, they can onboard Artifact Hub.
Yeah.
So
which is what all the open stuff is. Sorry, go.
Yeah, what I was saying is that they can do that regardless, like whether Gatekeeper officially been there or not. Anybody can still onboard themselves.
But there's no Gatekeeper category today.
I know, but someone can create it, right?
Right. It's just somebody will have to do that work, and obviously we run Gatekeeper, so it makes sense for us to do it.
We should be the one to do it.
Did they start by scraping Helm charts? Sorry, go ahead.
Earlier you talked about like the customizations, other than like the sort of like the, you know, the categories, the fancier categories. What else were you thinking?
Documentation around examples, right?
Why couldn't you include that in Artifact today?
You might be able to. You're certainly not going to get like maybe you could put like links to contributions. When you start getting into things like interdependencies, right? So here's a thing that you cannot do with Artifact Hub probably is let's say we have PSA or sorry pod security standards constraints, right? Just packages of constraints. I think we already kind of have this. And what we want to do, rather than like copy paste templates everywhere, because that's not going to scale, right? There's going to be like complex if people also ingest like PSP constraints elsewhere and they use the same templates. So what you probably want is some kind of like dependency resolution mechanism, right? Where you just have the PSS constraints and a command that looks at the sets of constraints you want to apply and resolves out the templates that you need to apply them.
Right, but wouldn't that be part of install?
Wouldn't what kind of install? Which install?
Like say if I want I don't know, like the user PSP, right? For example, like wouldn't the dependencies be part of the install command where the constraint template needs to be installed before the constraint?
Right, but how do you provide that, right? Like, are you talking about
CLI comes in, right?
Exactly.
Right, but but that's independent of, you know, the website, in my opinion, right? Like I feel like that's something that the CLI was solve.
Kind of. Well, for one, you're now discovering something different, right? You're discovering constraints rather than templates, right? And like to the extent that Docker Hub is like a place where you could list arbitrary things, sure. But you know, what does that look like? You have this checkbox that says gatekeeper constraints, checkbox that says gatekeeper templates. I hope that exists at some point, but it's not really guiding the user on how to consume this stuff, right? So in terms of having ownership over a space that tells users like what's possible and gives us a chance to like message best practices so that people aren't like stuck trying to figure out like, okay, the templates then constraints, and like they don't even realize we have these like helper tools.
Right.
It's better for us. Yeah.
Right. For this specific example you mentioned, right? Like I would imagine the CLI would eventually be used to check that the constraint template exists. If not, deploy it. If it already exists, then all you need to do is deploy the constraint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's the experience that we would have, that we need to add and implement regardless of where you're looking at in terms of is it is it Artifact or is it our own website, right?
Yes. My point is that Artifact Hub, like, yes, you could, as far as like publishing something where people can download it, sure. But it's not set up to provide any kind of like funnel for that CLI experience, right? And it's not set up for that kind of like nuance of here's, if you're someone who isn't familiar with Gatekeeper, right? I would probably put this stuff on Artifact Hub, but I would say come to this website if you really want to like figure out like efficient ways of consuming this, because you shouldn't be downloading them from Artifact Hub, right? Even if you're discovering them, you should be using our CLI command.
Right. And I think it does provide that. You can have, when you click the install button, you can have this, you can use your own CLI, you can point it to, Gatekeeper library if you want. That is there.
This is as, honestly, to me, this seems as helpful as the structure we currently have with a glossier UI, right? We can have templates and readmes just as fine there. There's a reason we want to build a website.
I guess I'm missing the point is, if we had our own website, how would that be different?
Well, there's actual like context, right? You control the organization, you control the presentation. Like, okay, let's imagine we don't build a website, right? And all we have is Docker Hub or Artifact Hub.
Mm-hmm.
How as a user am I meant to consume constraints and templates? Like, what guidance do we give them when we have the CLI command? How do they engage with that? What are the, like, if I want to contribute this template that I wrote to the library, how do I do that, right? Like Artifact Hub, you could put it in the README, right? I guess, or you could put it like in a link to the website. So I'm saying, yeah, if you have this like null space where you imagine no website and just Artifact Hub, you wind up with a website anyway. I suppose you could like wonder about whether you need like the categorization stuff, right? That the website putatively would have. Depending on how much effort we want to put into like Sugar, we could probably do a better job than we could in Artifact Hub in terms of presenting this stuff, right? Like create a tool that allows you to author constraints. That would be like very long tail though in the future. Anyway, sorry, I have a hard out at 10 that I've already skipped.
Yeah, so let's start with the doc, as I think we mentioned, and then let's make a decision next step.
Yeah.
I think we just need a priority to start with.
Right. And just so to be clear, like we are good with the directory structure, though, right? In our library.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as long as we can support either Artifact Hub or our own website.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, like our current directory structure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the record, if y'all want to do your own website, that's totally, I'm on board, right? I don't want to seem like I'm the only one that's pushing for it. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anyone's saying no to anything. Well, I hope no one's saying. I'm kind of hearing no from the website from you, actually. Like I never felt like I
want to be convinced that there's value add. Like if there's things that we want and we can't do in Artifact, then I'm game. That's all,
and then there's huge value in Artifact Hub. So I think it makes totally sense. There's a huge value in Artifact Hub, so it totally makes sense to start with that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because of like
I just heard a lot of pushback, so it is what it is.
Let me put together a doc, and I'll just say like Artifact Hub and website, and just try to put together something.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. The pushback would be Artifact Hub instead of website, to be clear, not pushback against Artifact Hub. Anyway, just so you know what I thought the conversation I was having was. All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
See you.
Bye.